My Brother's Debt by Michelle Stimpson. I still remember the moment they announced Deshaun's name like it was yesterday. The New York Knicks select Deshaun Mobley. The room roared so loudly I couldn't hear anything else the announcer said. Everyone was jumping and hollering, hugging and screaming, because, finally, someone we knew had made it big. I remember sitting on the couch in shock, thinking, my brother, in the NBA. When I really think about it, Deshaun's success shouldn't have come as a surprise. A lot of people thought the reason he was good was because he was tall and naturally talented. They were half right. At 6'4", Deshaun was reasonably tall, but he certainly wasn't a natural when it came to basketball. Actually, my brother Kelvin was the natural at basketball. He used to whip Deshaun's behind on the driveway court something fierce, until Deshaun got tired of his big brother making him look bad in front of every passing car. Kelvin was probably in 8th grade and Deshaun in 6th grade when Deshaun finally decided to work hard at basketball and put an end to Kelvin's trash talking. When my brothers played competitively, they made me sit on Mama's car and watch because they said I was too young. It didn't help that everyone called me Little Earl. The day Deshaun dunked on Kelvin, beating our oldest brother for the first time, was another one of those unforgettable, life-changing moments in our family. I hopped off the roof of the Honda screaming, "Deshaun, you did it! You beat Kelvin!" Deshaun threw me up on his shoulders, and we followed Kelvin, suddenly silent, back into the house. Deshaun and I sang, "We are the champions." We followed Kelvin all the way back to his room, where he promptly slammed the door in our faces. For the next 3 years, Deshaun got better and better. Kelvin stopped playing basketball and started hanging out with his friends instead of me and Deshaun. My parents made Kelvin go to Deshaun's high school games, but most of the time, Kelvin hung out in the hallways talking to girls instead of watching Kelvin play. Deshaun spent 4 years at Ohio State. He could have left college and entered the draft after his 3rd year, but my mom wanted to be sure he had a degree. By that time, I was in high school myself. Kelvin was on his own, living with different people, doing odd jobs here and there. My dad wouldn't let Kelvin come home because he said nobody over 18 years old could live in our house without being in college. Cool, I'm out then, Kelvin had mouthed off. Everybody can't be like Deshaun. I'm not asking you to be like Deshaun. I'm asking you to be responsible for yourself, my dad told him. Fast forward to when my brother started playing for the Knicks. He had a big house, a Hummer, a Benz, 2 bull mastiffs, and he even had horses on his land. He offered to buy my parents a house, but they said they were perfectly fine where they were. Son, don't blow all your money right now, Dad told him. You'd be better off using the money you have to make more money. Think about the future. Invest. This NBA money won't last forever. You ought to think about buying a few franchises and hiring people to run them. So one day I'm sitting right next to Deshaun playing Madden in his theater room while on summer break when one of Deshaun's restaurant managers calls. Well, my brother hesitated. Give him a chance. My brother hung up the phone, sighing. I wasn't one to get all in Deshaun's business, but I could tell he wanted to say something. What was that all about? Kelvin, he wants to work at one of my restaurants. Right then, I got a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. As things stood, Kelvin only came around on holidays. He always had a bad attitude. He always had a different woman with him. Not the pretty ones either. Hard-looking women with chapped lips and dark circles under their eyes who could barely finish a sentence. You could tell they'd been smoking for a long time, and Kelvin wasn't too far behind them with his yellow teeth. With that in mind, I wondered aloud, "You gonna let him work for you?" Deshaun shrugged. "I guess. He's my brother, and he needs a job. But don't tell Dad, all right?" "Whatever," I agreed. Kelvin was Deshaun's problem, not mine. Long story short, Kelvin got caught the first week stealing money from the cash register. The restaurant manager called Deshaun and told him what was going on. I guess he must have asked Deshaun if he should call the authorities. No, Deshaun almost yelled. Tell my brother not to move until I get there. We hopped into the Benz and rushed to the restaurant. Deshaun and I were led to the back office where Kelvin was sitting with a smug grin on his face. You gonna tell Dad on me? And what's he doing here? I defended myself. I'm just staying at Deshaun's house for the summer. Kelvin laughed. Must be nice to be able to sit up in a mansion and just chill all day. Deshaun took a step toward Kelvin. Kelvin stood, and, in an instant, they were face to face. Man, what is it with you? Deshaun asked. Why do you hate me so much? And you steal from me? A cloud of tension filled the room. Seriously, anything could pop off at any moment. Kelvin's eyes filled with rage. Everything you are, all your basketball skills, all your heart and determination, you got from me. You won't be nothing if it wasn't for me. And you never gave me anything, not one red dime. The way I see it, you owe me. Whatever I took from this store should have been mine anyway. Is that what you want? Money? Here, I've got money. Deshaun reached into his pocket, pulled out a stack of cash, and tossed it in the air. So now what? Kelvin took a look around at the money on the floor and shook his head. Man, I don't want your money. I want your respect as your big brother. Deshaun pulled Kelvin into a fervent embrace and cried, I love you, man. And I've missed you in my life. I've always looked up to you, and I'm sorry I never thanked you. I stood there wondering why on earth Deshaun would thank Kelvin. I mean, sure, Kelvin played basketball with him and everything, but Kelvin wasn't the one who got up at 5 a.m. to work out at the gym before school started. Kelvin wasn't the one who worked every weekend at the car wash to save up enough money for summer basketball camps. But there Deshaun was, giving Kelvin credit for something, I guess. A few seconds later, Kelvin's arm muscles loosened, and he finally reciprocated Deshaun's hug. There stood my two older brothers, hugging and crying. I hadn't seen them like this in years, probably not since the day Deshaun dunked on Kelvin. Kelvin looked past Deshaun's arm and motioned toward me. Come on, little Earl, you're in this too.